All right,
Yeah,
I
those
guess
are
we're
the
on now,
few
huh?
things you don't expect. That's great. I love it.
Yeah, they can see and hear us now. All right, that's perfect. Well, hey guys, if y'all are on, we're testing out a new platform to do all of our webinars, and we have less visual visibility into who's here until after the event. So don't make us feel alone. Put a chat in there, type a comment, let me know you've arrived. Um, Love to have a good feel of who's already here. On our other platform, we'd see everybody as they show up, so that's pretty cool. Cyrus, what's up, man? That was quick, Cyrus. It was fast, but you cheated with the emoji. So good work. We're gonna start right at the top of the hour, so 3 minutes, and let everybody kind of get settled. Someone hearted the hand. So Taylor, if this continues, where we start seeing a ton of names fast, take a note if there's anybody we know has already used Copilot. Oh, there's Sarah. Yeah, Sarah's already used Copilot. I want to make sure we bring them up later. Hope everybody's getting back from lunch. If y'all were like me, you probably got lunch and brought it over here. So you might be eating it with Jack. All right, if Jack's here, we got to shut it down. Todd, let's back out. We're not doing this. Jack, I hope you're doing good. I was hoping to catch you. I was in Austin for that cook-off. I was hoping to catch you then, but didn't work out. I'll grab you next time. Jermaine, did you hear the news that 911 was potentially cyber attacked overnight? It was
Yeah, I
four,
saw that this morning on my roll up,
yeah,
and I
four
was
different
like,
states,
wow.
all saying they had outages, and I don't know why. I didn't hear it in any of the news stories why they're
So,
jumping to the conclusion of cyber attack, but they're all saying highly possible.
yeah, a few people said that if you're on Microsoft too, things were taking about an hour or so to get back into utilization. So it might be a workload issue as well. But let's see where it lands. Typically by 6 p.m. today we'll know for sure.
Well, one of my favorites, the comments was if you had T-Mobile, you had no issue. So the T-Mobile customers out there, you'll keep flying under the radar. Was it AT&T had an outage recently, and I couldn't use Maps in my car. It threw me for a huge loop.
Oh man, it's taking really long to get from 1:59 to 2 o'clock.
Yeah. I think what we're going to see is that we're going to have to go back to analog phone lines too to make sure we don't get hacked at 911.
Hey, I'll go back to practicing my dot dash dash to
Yeah,
get it
there you
on.
go.
Need a little bit of Morse code in there every now and again.
I just got a text message that my headset makes me look like a nerdy Princess Leia. Thank you, Kyle. It came with an image of a nerdy Princess Leia. That couldn't have been better. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Guys, I'm today the Pilot James, and my two co-pilots here today, Jermaine and Todd, are with me. We're going to dig into Copilot, maybe the most talked about Microsoft release in just recent history. Everyone seems to have an opinion on it. Everyone seems to love it for a minute, hate it for a minute. They buy into it, then they back out of it. And so today we're going to dig into the right ways to use it and some of the different themes that we've been seeing along the way. The reason we do these, and we do a lot of events, it seems like there's a reason behind all of it, is that the stuff inside Center's walls that we talk about, we want to bring that to you because we find it important. We assume that if it's important to us, there's something about it that you'll find important too. So we do as many webinars and live events as we possibly put on and keep the topics from being too diluted. Our next one's coming up in June. I'll probably mention it later in the event today, but be on the lookout for invites for June 6th. It'll be our next opportunity to get together. If you were with us in our most recent ones, you'll probably seen a blend of educational webinars, and then also high level topics like just what's happening in security, or what's happening in cloud. And when we do those, we're looking to really get everybody's engagement. Today's one of those that's kind of blended. I want as much engagement as we can get. So if y'all can keep this chat going, give your opinions. Let us hear what you have to say about the topic. And then we'll be selecting different pieces of it that we hear from y'all and incorporating it into our Q&A. To start, I'll do some quick introductions. Todd Smith, a lot of y'all who are on probably already know he's Center CTO. I believe he's technically the third employee hired at Center, hired as an intern, and then worked his way up to a higher title like CTO. Was it the jump from there, Todd, intern to CTO?
Yeah, right away. Yeah. No,
it's a good interview.
Yeah, worked all the way on, I guess, tier 1, tier 2 team. Managed our managed services team for a while, our data center hosted services, and just kind of worked my way up. Little bit everywhere.
Today inside Center, he's also responsible for what we call our C stack, which is the products that Center standardizes on. We don't sell anything and everything, just those that we've kind of blessed as best of breed. And with that, what we end up adopting for Microsoft and how we leverage it runs through Todd and his department as well. So many of you who have your Microsoft tenant managed by Center in either an indirect or very direct way have Todd touching that tenant. Jermaine is also with us. Our Microsoft relationships growing exponentially, and we have the Sherweb team, our Microsoft distributor, to thank for that. Jermaine is with Sherweb and is here to be our Copilot expert for the things that we don't know outside of Center. So Jermaine, thank you for being here with us today.
I'm glad to be here. I'm really glad I got the invite, and we've got Pilot, Copilot, and Co-Copilot. So I think we're running with the theme here very well. And it's really good to see the engagement in the chat right off the bat. That's always a plus because it means we're going to get some really good questions and a whole lot of laughs out of this one. Just to give everybody a quick background on myself, coming over from Sherweb, I am the Copilot expert. I've been around Copilot since the initial early access program. And if it doesn't work, which is what it mostly does, I've seen it. So it'll be good today to answer your questions, and you won't feel alone in that you try to do a thing with it and it doesn't do the thing. Well, it doesn't do the thing with most of the things. So there you go. What the expert has to say for today. So hit us with all the questions, queries, and hopefully we'll get you coming out of this with a little bit more enthusiasm on how to keep trying.
That was good. So the thing works great at times, but when the thing doesn't work with the thing, it should be expected.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, it sounds like some of y'all are too comfortable with me, like those of y'all are saying I look like a nerdy Princess Leia. So I'm going to go ahead and spill the beans here a bit and share with y'all that my presentation for today looks a lot like this. Slept in, woke up late, remembered I had some other meetings I had to take care of, and I prioritized all my other things over this thing. So let's pray that it works. I wrote a little blog on what it was I wanted to accomplish today, and I thought we'd let Copilot build our presentation for us. So what we're going to present to you today will be brought to you by Copilot. So hopefully nobody snuck anything into this description as I walked away from my computer earlier, because that could create some pretty awful situations for me here. This is probably the background of my involvement with Copilot, is that early on when it became available, Todd Smith gave me one of the licenses and I started to use it in ways that my mind would work around AI. And what I found pretty quick was writing all that. See, something went wrong. The thing didn't work with the thing. Writing all of that wasn't necessarily going to get me anywhere. It wasn't going to, I mean, I could type the presentation out just as fast as I could build the instruction to Copilot and then go proofread it and then go edit it. So I kind of just left it alone. A month, 2 months later, I had sat down with Todd and I told Todd that this isn't going to work for me. Like I'm not getting any value out of this. So what it turned into after that was Todd took my license away. So this morning I had to ask for it back, and when he gave it back to me, I decided to go back to my old ways, which is probably the number one mistake people are making with their Copilot license is they can't think beyond the basic uses of what they assume it's for. So here we go.
So
Let's hope
I'd
this
also like
works.
to jump in while you're getting
Yeah,
that loaded
please.
up there, James, because typically what just happened was you gave Copilot so much stuff to read that it was stalling. It was like, oh man, I don't know what to tell this guy. Hold on a
Right.
second. Something went wrong. You threw the
Yeah.
same prompt in a second time, and it had enough time to go back to the internet, and it had some time to check your previously made PowerPoint presentations. And then it came back in and it was like, all right, I got something for you. Here's a lady reading some stuff. So no, Copilot is just like people, yeah. It'll take
Yeah.
instructions and you got to come back to it with additional information so that it'll do things. Just so I demonstrate that.
Yeah. So, and guys, the point of the PowerPoint isn't necessarily to make y'all think we aren't ready to talk about this. The reality is, I just felt like this would be a good way for if Copilot tells us the best way to ingest it, we're going to take Jermaine and Todd through that same path. So let's just go ahead and know right now that I'm the guy in the company that's saying to everyone that Copilot is a great tool in theory, but I'm not getting any actual value from it. Todd, you're the first and center to raise your hand and say, let me explain to you how it's beneficial. Before we get into the benefit, can you explain a little bit about why you think Microsoft is driving this direction?
Yeah, I mean, aside from it being the buzzword, it is going to be the path of the future.
Well, we've had
Art,
buzzwords. We've had
yeah,
big data was one recently, and they released some Power BI stuff to give us some visibility, but it wasn't shoved the way that
yeah.
Copilot and the buzzword AI was. Why is this different?
It's being able to utilize that big data, being able to make and help make intelligent decisions for us, and help make our jobs easier with automation. So it's almost like a sidekick, like a co-pilot, for example,
Like
to
a
help make your
Copilot.
job help make your job easier.
Well named. Jermaine, similar question, but I have a theory that Microsoft has gotten a little bit too wide in the different products they offer. Too many people are using just a narrow version of what Microsoft can do. Is Copilot supposed to open the door a bit into what basic users are doing today?
So great question, and co-pilot Todd, I really liked your answer as well. Uh, I think the idea here is the dataverse, and it's one of the other buzzwords you're going to hear coming around pretty soon. That dataverse, there's so many applications, so many different ways you can use it. There's going to be so many AI, large language models on the internet that you're going to have to figure out how to use it. And the whole purpose of Copilot is to bring together that entire ecosystem so that the average user doesn't need to go learn all 87 apps that they have on their computer related to Microsoft. They can just go straight into Teams, click on Copilot, and ask it for the thing. So I submitted all the questions I got from your team on, hey, here's what we're going to talk about today. And I said, hey, Copilot, if you were going to talk about yourself, give me 3 bullet points on each of these answers, and I'll go to bat with that. But it's really getting something in front of all the information that's behind there. Because if you don't know what to look for or you don't know what to do, like we're seeing in some of the comments, I don't know how to use the thing. So why would I use the thing? Not today.
Right.
So I think it's really there to help people figure out how to get the answers they need without having to learn all the back end. And you're right, everybody's using a narrow
Their narrow
bandwidth of
version.
what they're using
Yeah.
with Microsoft. Even here, I mean, not to call us out on this, but we're doing a webinar and we're not in Teams. Copilot's gonna be mad.
Too funny. Same with my phone, right? Like I've got more features on it than I'm using today. But this is helping us get outside of our comfort zone a bit within the Microsoft stack and start using some new stuff. There's a lot of integration to these different platforms. One of those that's been talked about, I just mentioned with big data, is that Power Platform. That is that kind of the key here? Is the big picture? Say fast forward 5-10 years, that the Copilot and Power Platform with its automation is going to wind up automating all the different things we do.
Now I'm gonna jump around with excitement. I know Todd wanted to get in here, but I'm gonna go because my brain's buzzing. It's not gonna be 5 to 10 years. It'll be probably end of fiscal year or end of calendar year next year. Because right now there's Power Pages, there's Power Create, there's Power, all of the powers. And you can go and build it right now. You can, same way we just built that presentation, we can actually build a web page and launch it using Power Pages via Copilot for the Power Platform. So that exists today. It's of course in early stages, right? It's not going to do all of the things you'd like it to do today,
Right.
but you can build a full web page. I built myself. So the low code, no code
You
is what's
built
going to be
yourself?
exciting. I
Yep.
built myself an application to monitor all of my emails coming in. Yeah, no, it'll be pretty hard to build this from scratch again. Copilot's going to struggle for sure.
Yeah.
I built an app to track emails coming in from all of the different partners that we work with and group them by people with the name Peter, right? Like, I mean, obviously I had some time on my hands, but in doing that, I was able to make a power app using low code, no code, large language, just regular guy with no technical experience on the back end. And I was able to do that in about 5 minutes with my Copilot. So is it going to be big in integration and Power Platform? Yes. Everybody's going to have their own workflows. If you know what you do in a day-to-day job, you can actually set up your own workflow with Copilot so that you don't have to do the things and you can go grab a coffee or watch some TV or play golf
Right.
like some people do.
Well, that sounds like there would be a lot of integration then. So Todd, is it
Yeah.
out of the box ready to go?
Yes and no, right? So it can be, but one of the benefits with it being on Microsoft and specifically the Microsoft 365 Copilot license is that it pulls in everything that your user account has access to in the Microsoft ecosystem. So your Teams chats, your Teams meetings, your emails, your Word documents, assuming they're in OneDrive or SharePoint, and it whatever you ask it about those, it's going to pull in that data. So it can be, but that's also something that that might come up on this is that you got to make sure that your team's ready and that your environment's ready, and mainly data security. So whatever permissions people have access to view, they're going to be able to pull that data in when they ask Copilot questions. So if somebody hasn't locked down salary information for employees in the HR folder and they ask it something about that, there's a chance it could pull in that data. So you got to make sure that you have the data and the permissions locked down. Otherwise, it is mostly ready. You add the license, you deploy the plugins, it gets added into Teams, and you can start utilizing it. There are free versions of it today. So anybody can go to copilot.microsoft.com. That experience is going to be similar to ChatGPT. It actually uses that same large language model. If you have certain licenses with Microsoft, you can take advantage of some of the privacy settings as well, whereas they're not going to collect that data and use it to update their large language model, whereas ChatGPT is. Whatever you give it, you're giving the world. You're giving their large language model. So that's another benefit of utilizing Microsoft's Copilot.
Yeah, I was looking at how many different copilots there are, Jermaine. So
Yeah.
there may be too many.
Yeah.
I thought I had that up, but I guess I don't. I'm gonna go back to the presentation, but I think there's 7 different copilots. Does that sound right? Yeah. Today. You think it's all consolidating?
There's a roadmap to increase it. Yes.
To increase it. So you think that tomorrow there'll be more different Copilot names, different licenses?
Absolutely. I mean, they're working on releasing one right now. So the advent of the idea here is we've got how many different positions within your company today, right? And each of those positions you can put into a specific department. You've got your accounting, your HR, your project management.
Mm-hmm.
If you ran a trucking company, you'd have a dispatcher. You'd have a logistics team around tracking for your trucks, deliveries, etc. If you think about it from that perspective, there's going to be one for any advent of a particular type of job that supports an environment. I'm sure at some point there's going to be one for tracking air traffic control and supporting with flight path information and getting people from place to place. So when you think about it from that perspective, there's going to be more Copilots. The next one that's coming out that'll be huge is Copilot for SimSOC and security for your environment. So instead of somebody spending 3-4 days trying to go through and comb through 50,000 logs, the Copilot for security will ingest all of that data and punt out the recommendations on what you should be doing to circumvent the problem, which then will help everybody's business across the board. So yeah, there are going to be tons of them, but right now the kind of core five, 4 or 5 that they have out there are speaking directly to the lowest hanging fruit within the environment today, which is what we have in our traditional jobs.
Okay, well, I guess continue down that path. We have a combination right now of IT people. I think we have a lot in the accounting department that are on, potentially some that wear the HR hat. Give a couple examples, Jermaine, on what are different uses that you've heard of or seen used in different departments, to kind of put it into, I don't know, a clearer view of an example.
Oh, for sure. I like the HR one because it's one of the better ones to deal with. And this isn't even from a, can I make your HR job easier? It's more of, as a user or a person within the company, if I have access to an HR bot where I can ask, say, what's my current benefits plan? How many vacations days do I have remaining? Last week, somebody made an inappropriate joke in the kitchen. What do I do so that I'm not the aggressor in this particular situation? How do I report an incident? Something that becomes more sensitive, that an individual does not want to go talk to the HR person in person or on a video call right away. They would like to know what their options are. If you've got a Copilot that is your HR Copilot, and it can feed information that is all in your documentation within your environment, the user now does not have to go directly to a person and experience that right off the bat. The other part of, or the flip side of that coin, is the HR person also doesn't have to answer 1,500 questions in the same week about how many vacation days I have off. Or are we getting the Eclipse Day off? Is that a holiday? Is that going to be a holiday? Did we get the Eclipse Day off? No.
We just get to work from home. you just walk outside during lunch and get back to work.
The other ones that you'll see, which is great. Other examples that are cool. I mean, everything. If I'm writing, I write a lot of policies for our team. Here's our framework around how we do webinars with partners. I'm not writing draft one of that. I haven't written a single initial draft of any document for the last 10 months, right? Every time I need something, I did exactly what you did with the PowerPoint. I go in, I open up a brand new Word document, and it says, write this with Copilot. And I'm like, I will. And I give it some parameters, and it shoots it in. The good thing about it is, which is one of the things we see a lot of people have trouble with, is they try it out today and it doesn't work, and they throw it in the side bin and they come back to it in 6 months. And I'm like, if you hired a brand new executive assistant today, or you hired a brand new IT person to do support desk tickets right out of university, and they come into your organization, they won't know where anything is. They won't know what your policy on HR is. They don't know where the coffee machine is or the pods. And if you don't train them, they will never learn that. So if day one they come to work and you're like, okay, go make me a coffee, do this, do that, and send this mail, they're like, I don't know where anything is. So when you're training your Copilot and you're going to use it for HR, you're going to use it in accounting, you want to run a spreadsheet and do an analysis, you get a report on, the most valuable products you've sold in the last 6 months, you have to teach the Copilot what that looks like, so that the next time you ask the question, you're going to get more information back. So we got that. We got an example around that. We've got an example around, or many examples around, preparing documentation for proposals, right? Gone are the days where we're Control X, Control V to cut and paste stuff from the last two. And then you get there and you're doing the presentation and it still says Copilot Todd when you swear you did a replacement and it's supposed to be Pilot James, right? And a lot of that, you take out human error in it.
Yeah, that's funny. You're replacing human error with potentially machine error, but yes, you're still having to edit and not do it blindly like we're doing today. But that was perfect. So accounting teams are going to leverage that a little bit differently. Jermaine, I was sharing with you that Center recently acquired a company out of Dallas that specializes in Dynamics, specifically the Business Central ERP system. I guess can you share for those that are on today that are a part of that, the customers that are new to us, but part of that acquisition, if they incorporate a Copilot license, what are they going to start feeling that's different in their day-to-day if they have Business Central?
So the best part of this will be around looking at access. So if you think about Business Central, it's tied into all of the database information. If you're selling product, you're running a logistics company, whatever you're doing, whatever your ERP is managing for your services, just consider that computers don't forget. They can't forget because it's just data that's always going to be pushed forward. So if I were to go to Todd and ask him, well, tell me a little bit more about your progression to CTO. What did you do 2.5 years ago that was, the classic moment of James came out and he's like, you did a great job doing this. I'm promoting you today. If I were to ask you to do that, you're probably going to give me 40% of the detail from that day. When I ask the computer, it's always going to give me the detail that is there because those are the facts. There's no additional information. In Business Central, when you're going to be using that, because Business Central is pulling all of the data from a single place, every time you update data, Copilot will be updated. And on the front end, whatever question you ask it will be the most real-time data that you can get. Now, caution to the wind here. If you put garbage into your database, you put your SQL and it's got junk in it, it's going to spit out junk because, again, it's not smart. It's reading what's in your database and giving you answers that make the most sense towards your questions. So at the end of the day, you still have to manage your data. You still have to ensure that you've got a good governance platform around the type of information that's going into your database. But then Copilot will be able to pull out all the information that you're doing. Now, as an example, you're in Business Central, you're like, hey, Center is purchased, did $387,000 worth of services with us in the last 6 months. I'd like to see what that looks like for the last 6 years. What is the highest area that we spend the most money with in collaboration with Center? It's going to be able to pull all that data and give you that information right away, as opposed to me going in and running a pivot table and doing some inversions and then spitting out something in Excel later on.
Right.
I can get that at my fingertips right away. And then I can have a conversation with you and say, look, here's where you're investing the most of your money with us today. Here's where we need to focus on. Let's work that business forward. Get rid of all the junk in the bottom. So,
yeah, Jermaine, that was an example that was given to me a little bit similar. It was if our head of marketing, Sarah, who I think's on today, were to request from our CFO, Shelly, what was our spend in events in the territory of Dallas. She wouldn't really speak that way, but if she asked Shelly, what did we spend on marketing events in Dallas last year? Shelly can almost copy and paste that question or retype it and however she wants to say it into Copilot and have that through Teams right back to Sarah.
Yeah, I'll take it even one step further. Sarah wouldn't even have to ask Taylor or Shelly or Kelly. There's lots of names.
Whoever it is. Yeah.
Whoever it is. You wouldn't have to ask because it'll probably take you longer to message them and hear back than it would to just click on your own Copilot and be like, how much did we spend on events this time last year for 6 months or Dallas, Texas, or wherever you'd like to go. And it'll tell you in real time right away. So you don't need to. But this is a part of this is part of the mentality of thinking, how do you work every day? You can't do it the same way you did before. You're not going to go over and have a coffee chat to tell somebody else to ask Copilot to give you some data. You have access to the same data. You just ask Copilot. So it takes out the middle.
It does it for you. Yeah, and think about from the perspective of, for those of y'all on the accounting side, your days are already full. You know what you have on your plate, and then sales or marketing puts a wrench in your plans because they need something ASAP. What a great way to save some time and be more efficient. Yep. Oh, who did we unmute? Was that Taylor?
That is Taylor. I think I foreshadowed that question. I foreshadowed that question.
Taylor, as usual, I have forgotten to introduce you. My apologies. Guys, if y'all have done events with us before, Taylor has been our producer. Emily has also been joining her on recent events. They are on with us again today. Hopefully they've been live in the chat with y'all. But yeah, so Taylor, hit us. What was the question?
Okay, now y'all can hear me and see me. So how do you enter in the data? That's what Susan said. We do have some other questions in the chat, but that one's relevant to where you guys are talking about. You say enter in the data. Are you just putting it in Copilot? Like, how do we know what to ask?
That's a great question. Would you like me to take this one?
Well, I think it almost depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Like for me, it was once you have a Copilot license, then Copilot sits right up here in the corner. So I don't know if y'all have ever used Designer. That's always a favorite. But Designer will help do your slides. Then inside of, let's say it's Outlook you're in, or if it's in Excel, then you're going to see a Copilot window that will ask you what you want to accomplish.
So from an entering data perspective on the back end, today it's exactly what you do. If let's say you get a new work order submission via email, somebody saves that work order in the work order folder for 2023, 2024. It goes into a specific work order folder. In that folder, everybody knows where the work order is, so they can then print it and manipulate the work order from that location. When we say input data into your backend, it is how are you managing new data that's coming into your ecosystem within Microsoft 365. It's how are you balancing that data? How are you controlling what the data does? I don't know. I'll put my hand up for this question I'm going to ask. How many people here have 11 folders that say Copilot, Copilots, Copilot with a capital P in between, Copilot with a dash? And because 11 people created these folders and nobody had a naming convention, so when they searched Copilot with the dash, it never came up. So they're like, well, there isn't a Copilot folder. I'm going to go create one. So now you've got 6 folders that are called Copilot in all different variations. And because of that, your data now, when somebody says, hey, yeah, go to my Copilot folder, it's got all the stuff. When you go in there and you type co, there's 6 of them are going to come up. Now you're playing whack-a-mole to figure out where the data is. We don't want that to happen with any data that you're using in your tenant. So you need a governance policy, to Todd's point. When you put your data in, it needs to be tagged a certain way, and you need to use it in a certain way so that it always does it, so that the computer knows where to go to grab the data. And sorry, I'm Canadian, so sometimes I say data and sometimes I say data. It really depends on where I am in the sentence. It means the same thing.
That apology accepted. It's okay. You're from Canada. Taylor, were there more questions?
Yeah, I want to jump around to a few more of these.
Sure.
Joshua said, is there any form of audit tracking for Copilot? Are we able to see if someone is potentially trying to access data that they shouldn't?
I see Todd nodding. I'll let him take this one.
Yes, there is. So when you use Copilot, again, there's different ways to do it. So for example, the Copilot chat. If I go to copilot.microsoft.com and I have that Copilot for 365 license, I then get a different tab, one for work, one for web. I can ask the web one questions, and it's literally going to search the internet. That data you can't really audit. However, if I click Office and I do a search or ask it a question about a particular document, a particular topic, that data is audited to where whatever documents it's accessing to pull that data, it's auditing as if the user is accessing those documents. So yes, whatever data that is being utilized to pull in and collect, it is audited.
The other part I'd like to add to that is, because if you set it up correctly, or when you set up your Microsoft tenant correctly in SharePoint logs, audits everything. And Copilot accessing data in SharePoint is no different to a computer than myself or James or Todd accessing that data. So it will log every change or every touch point that access data has, right? So it's very important to note from that perspective as well. Anything that's accessed in your tenant, because we know a security question is going to come up later for sure. Anything that's accessed in your tenant, you can go back and see who accessed it, date, timestamp, and when, and whether or not they tried to forward it, download it, and so on. Whenever we get into the kind of the data loss prevention, security, and how do we keep disgruntled employees from stealing all our stuff. At some point, we'll get into that, including Copilot.
Yeah, Cyrus asked a good question on that topic too. Do you have to pick out every single thing that it's going to use, or is SharePoint wide open? Is there any regulation there?
Ooh.
Center able to help with that?
Oh. Yeah, Cyrus is my now favorite person. Cyrus, I can't wait until we meet. So I'm going to jump on this one because the answer is you do not want to give it access to everything. You 100% do not want to do that. Ideally, and this is open to the world, if you've got how many of you have a garage with storage? If you have a garage with storage and you walk in there and you've got access to everything, it's just, stuff you've never touched for 15 to 20 years. Okay, I'm not calling you hoarders. I'm just saying it's in there. It's a lot of data, right? If you're going to get something brand new, let's say you bought your favorite sports car and you want space for it, you're going to clean all that junk out. You're going to make space because you don't want your car scratched. You don't want some old hockey skates or something falling on your car. You're going to clean your garage out. If you're going to do that, some people go real hardcore and they'll build an entirely new garage because they don't want the family touching their car. So it's going to go in an entirely new garage. The recommendation here, when you set up your data governance and you want the AI Copilot to have access to it, build a new SharePoint site, build your governance information and selection around that, build your security practice, and then any data that you put into that SharePoint will get tagged with the right information. Is this personal information? Is this credit card information? How secure should this be? And it'll get labeled on the way into the new place. Instead of going back and trying to relabeling all of the stuff from 25 years ago, don't. Create a new space, give Copilot access to that in your tenant, and then put anything that people need access to in Copilot into that location. That way you get rid of all the junk, the bad information, the old stuff, and you have an opportunity to relabel all of the current data that you're using without going back and doing a ton of work on the back end.
Taylor, I'm just starting to see some of the questions. I don't think the second half of the presentation is even needed. Just keep hitting us with these. Todd, do you have anything to add to what Jermaine said, though? I'm curious about.
He was spot on.
I do want to get to some tips and tricks and fun ways to use Copilot. So we'll save that for the end. Sure. But we do have some great questions, so I'll keep rolling. Okay, so you're setting up Copilot for the first time. What are 3 steps you can do to get started setting up Copilot? Would you recommend 3?
It's almost like which Copilot did you buy?
Yeah.
So we're gonna buy Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is the standard for everyone everyday utilization for work. So it'll give you access to everything you want. It's kind of like Windows Home versus Windows Pro, right? You buy the home version, all of a sudden you can do a thing that you never thought you needed to do for work, and then you go to Windows Pro and it does the one more thing. So in this particular sense, when you're gonna set it up in your tenant, there is no setup. It's like your business premium. You go in, you buy the license, you attach it to the person has it, they use it. It will not be effective in that way. So if you're just doing it, what you really need is for your team here at Center to come in, do an audit of your environment, look at the data that you want to access, make it available to Copilot. Then you buy your 10 Copilot or 20 Copilot or whatever licenses you want, and you attach it to that. So there's no difference here. The easy part of this is, as the end customer here, getting that Copilot license, you just want to do the fun parts. Let the IT technical people fix your environment to the way that is AI ready, so to speak, and then buy your licenses and go. At the time that you're ready to buy your license, it should be Todd and team, I want 25 licenses, and they say, okay. They buy it, they assign it to you, and you just start using it. That's straight up.
This is Jermaine. You're spot on. This will be your use case as an organization. If all you do is buy a license and assign it to someone to test it out, will be the description I gave you of what I've been going through. I'm the guy that just used it for how do I creatively make a slide, and there's no real value in that. The message still conveys.
15,000 petabytes of processing data to create a slide that you were disappointed with.
Yes.
Turn off.
So the magic comes in that integration component where you're actually leveraging some level of logic into the data of what people are going to access and why. Todd, have that process at Center, anything you want to speak on, at least of the undertaking that took to prepare a business? Is that a huge undertaking? Should they be intimidated by this, or should this be something that will be done in a week?
It all depends. It depends, like garbage in, garbage out. It depends on how much housekeeping you've done on your data, the permissions, and so I would hope, and we do a pretty good job at Center of making sure that users have access to what they should have access to. but there's still going to be the junk. We still have to do a lot of cleanup on SharePoint sites and duplicate data sets and things like that. So there is going to be some maintenance. It just depends on, how big the SharePoint site is, how much data there is, and then how well kept the permissions were as well for data governance. So it really depends. For most clients, it may not be. A lot of times they might decide not to allow SharePoint data, and just allow the users OneDrive data, email, Teams. That's the easiest way, and then come back to it once your SharePoint data and permissions are cleaned up.
Okay.
All right. Well, I mean, if my data looks like my closet, then we might be in trouble. But John asked a good question. Can Copilot access third-party systems, payroll, ERP, etc., or do you have to dump everything into SharePoint? You have to walk into my closet to find everything, or go into other bedrooms?
Oh, this one's a tough one. I don't know. You said it was John that asked?
Yeah.
Okay, so John, I don't know if you're going to like the answer on this one. Hopefully it works for everyone. So right now, when we think about Copilot, right now we're thinking about Copilot for your own tenant, your own Microsoft 365 space, your company data. The moment you want to integrate information, say from external financial software like ADP or any of those things, whatever ERP system you might have configured elsewhere that's legacy that you want to bring that to be able to utilize it with Copilot, you're going to have to get into the world of what we call Microsoft Fabric. And what Microsoft Fabric does, it is in order to maintain the security and the efficacy of the data in the different software external locations, Fabric allows the Copilot to read that information without downloading it from external, allow Copilot to process that data and give you the right answer without moving any of that secure data from any of its external locations. So it basically weaves the Fabric into the Copilot AI brain, which then allows you to read that into your environment. At this stage, it's more of an enterprise level situation where they're putting in 1,800 different external bits of information into Fabric in their Azure AI, and then spitting out the right thing for their Copilot. When you want to get there in the future, which you 100% can, my suggestion is wait a little bit and see how the costing and all that stuff comes down. But you can do it, just it isn't recommended today at a smaller scale. So if your company is under 1,000 users and you're consuming less than 10 gigs of data, it's not worth it cost-wise to do something like that, but it can be done for sure.
And of course, if you would stop using third-party applications and use the whole Microsoft stack, then it would be
I didn't want to say that, but you're allowed to say that. I mean, my thing is, if you've got an ERP, migrate to Business Central right away. Just don't even bother.
Yeah, good point. Just a reminder to everybody: the Power Stack, the Automate, the Power BI, the things inside of Dynamics. Come to Center for that stuff. We can help you with those sides of the Microsoft house as well. Taylor, what else?
Okay, Andy asked a good question, and then maybe we can transition.
Salazar?
To some of
Andy?
Andy Salazar. Good question.
Can't believe he's on.
And then maybe we can transition to some fun things that we can do with Copilot. So Andy said, does the data which Copilot generates get logged or stored for future review if needed? Wondering how a business knows that Copilot is being used responsibly.
All right. So responsibility. So you've got to set the terms. So responsibility in the computer world is you set the terms of what is responsible versus not. So as an example, even if you do it with ChatGPT external today, if you ask them to say, tell me how to make a bomb, it'll be like, while I have access to that information, I cannot provide it to you. That would be the response coming back from the AI. And that is the response because the ChatGPT gurus have decided that they don't want to be responsible for people making bombs. So they've put that guardrail around ChatGPT. In the same sense, in terms of responsible use, you need to write your own internal IT policy or your own company policy around what people should be using AI for as their Copilot. And then based on that, those parameters can be injected into your tenant as to program your AI. So as an example, let's say somebody has access to the AI HR bot and they're like, hey, tell me what Todd asked you in the last 6 days about toenail clippings. It's not going to publish that to Todd. It's not going to publish that to anybody except to the person that put the initial inquiry in. And it's important to note as well, from a utilization metrics perspective, a lot of what is tracked is how often are you using it? Is it being helpful? How often are you asking it to refresh an answer and so on, so that the AI itself gets better at what it does, as opposed to, well, did you use it to try and take over the world? Did you use it to access financial data? Which you can put into place as an alert if someone tries to access financial data or they try. But either way, when your permissions are set up correctly, you can rest easy that they don't have access generally. So Copilot at their security level will not have access either.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's only going to give them what they have access to.
Correct.
And
Center
when it
gave me
comes,
a license, so there has to be a way they know.
yeah, and one thing that's helpful as well is as far as usage, Microsoft's done a good job at tracking usage of the different licenses as well. So whenever somebody asks me, hey Todd, can I have a Copilot license? Right now they're not very cheap to get started. You got to buy the annual license up front. So I'm not always just saying, yeah, I'm gonna go buy one. I'm gonna see, is everyone using one? And I'll go look at the usage and see, well, James hasn't actually used it in 30 days or a week. I'm going to take his away and I'm going to let him know and give it to somebody else to utilize. I do the same thing with Vizio and other licenses, and they have it to where it's actually seeing if the person's using. I can't see what they're doing in Vizio and that level, but just are they consuming it or not in that report? And it helps to where you get the most bang for your buck and make sure it's your license you're paying for actually getting utilized.
That's maybe my most favorite starting point is everyone seems to use it for listening in on like a Teams meeting and then giving you a recap back.
Yeah.
And so Todd told me early on, he's like, I love that it does that. I don't know. I'm just present in the meetings. I just take a note or a memory of it, and I don't need that. And so Jermaine, you said you use that feature nonstop. And all I can think about is I would never look back. I would never think to go backwards to go find the information.
No,
Was my own behaviors.
But the whole point of that though is, how many times have you had to go rework something because you swore coming out of the meeting, you said, here's your action item, and then the person was like, yeah, I got it, and then they go away and everybody wrote down a different action item, and then you came back and you've got 2-pound cakes and a Jello dessert, and nobody ordered that, right? But the situation
Nobody.
here, again, if you do the transcript, you do your transcription within your meeting. It's not even about yourself at the end of the day. If you turn on your transcription, let's say Todd's on vacation for 3 weeks, you guys had 57 meetings, and then he comes back and you're like, well, Todd, here's your bag. See you later, buddy. I want you to catch up on the next, here are the 10 projects that you need to catch up on post-vacation. Now, Todd's going to be like pouring through for 3 days. Nobody's going to see Todd because he's like under his bed reading through all of this stuff. But you don't want that. With Copilot now, if you go in and you're like, hey, can you summarize all the meetings where action items or information was submitted to me about this client, etc., it'll give you a roll-up. Then you verify that the roll-up's good, and now you've just read your 1,500 emails and you've gotten all the action points that came out of that. And now that's 10 minutes worth of work for Copilot to read through and give you all the stuff you need, and you verify it. Now you've got your action item list. And you can still go out to lunch on your second day back from vacation with your team, not having to worry about what's left to read in the email pile.
Right? Dang, I feel called out.
I know, right? We just make Todd eat at his desk and read his emails.
It's true.
It's true.
Hey, just
Taylor, what else?
Quick clarifying question from Shelly. If we have our files on a center data server instead of SharePoint, then we have to use Fabric.
Hey, can you guys tell me how you want me to answer this on the other side?
Yeah, just give me a second to ingest that one for a minute. So it sounds like, Todd, they're leveraging our private cloud.
Yep.
And so the data that's on private cloud,
they're going to file server share.
It'd be a file server, right? So how would that work? Could it still access it like SharePoint?
Jermaine, what's your answer?
Yeah.
So, okay, so my answer is for scalability and to help the people, the amazing team over at Center, I'd say two things. One, if you've got enough data that you don't want to pay to have in SharePoint that's fully accessible and it's functionality and everything you get out of on-prem, we can tie back the data source to your SharePoint or your Microsoft 365 tenant for access. The only thing with that is direct storage is really hard for Copilot to index and to be able to read the information, because how it's set up in SharePoint or online is different than the permissions and security structure that you have on premise, right? And in these two particular situations, the hosted data service is on premise. So the idea would not be to do that. What the idea would be, and it is a recommendation, not the end of the world, but the idea would be select what data you actually need, put it all up into SharePoint, get your stuff into Dynamics and Business Central, and use it from there, because that'll be the best experience, and that would be the recommendation. And I think then Todd and James won't have to manage that hosted cloud going forward. Make everybody's life easier.
Good answer, Shelley. If you want more on that and how it might be used for you, we can do that offline. That answer is a little different based on how we have you set up. So we can take that offline.
Yeah.
It could be an on hosted SharePoint exchange, which would have relatively the same configuration as online.
So I know that there's often questions about the different 365 and Copilot licenses.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be a good one to touch on. So if you have Microsoft 365 E3 and E5, you get to utilize, it started out as Bing Enterprise Chat, and then much like Microsoft, they like to rebrand it all, and now it's Copilot. It's the Copilot Chat. You get a more premium experience utilizing the latest large language models and that privacy of Microsoft. So if you have those licenses, you can use the copilot.microsoft.com with your account, take advantage of that. You still
They've
can
also
utilize
moved that down to Business Premium as well, Tom.
Yeah. Oh, they did? Awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
I was
so
wondering, that
Premium
makes a
as
lot
well,
more
you
sense.
can. Yeah.
Awesome. So that is available. A lot of business, that makes Business Premium even more attractive. There's also the Copilot for 365, which is what a lot of what we've talked about today. Integrates with everything like your SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, email, all of that. And then there's as well the Teams Premium. And so the Copilot for 365 has some advantages and integration with Teams. Teams Premium kind of does as well. And so the Copilot for 365 is an add-on license. It's a little more on the pricey side, where it ends up being about $30 user a month. Right now, I think it's $360 annual upfront. And part of that reason they did that, I think, is like what Jermaine mentioned earlier. They don't want you to abandon it right away if you don't know how to use it. They want you committed to it. It is a little bit of commitment. They want you invested as well. But then there's the Teams Premium, which I believe is like around $10 a user a month, and that helps more with the meeting side. It does the recaps, the meeting
sentiment,
recaps.
all the sales stuff. And just for everybody's knowledge here, this is new. They told us, I think, last Thursday, we're going to take all of the Teams out of your future Microsoft 365 licensing. So your Business Premium will no longer include a version of Teams, and then we're going to have Teams Standard, Teams Pro, or Teams Premium going forward. So,
but don't worry, guys. They're going to just slightly decrease the price of the license, but increase it by the price of Teams. So you'll still pay an extra $1 or $2, but
hopefully they decrease it by the same amount. we're not sure yet. That's my genuine hope. But it's to ensure that people get, so for people who host webinars and do all of this, you need a certain subset of your company having Teams Premium versus Teams for Business. And in those scenarios, We want to make sure you're leveraging the right value license for your team so that you balance your cash flow on that, especially if you're going to be committing to an annual or an annual monthly license.
Good job jumping in there on that piece. That was news that we were getting out to some of our customers when that was released. It looks like, Todd, you can back me up here, but the grandfathered in clause, those who are already on it today
Correct.
aren't going to experience a forced change. It's going to be more for those that are more net new.
Yeah,
at least today. It could change in the future. Yeah.
Well, we know how that goes, right?
Right.
It's like, hey, it's fine, and then 6 months later, they're like, you got 5 months left, and we're going to turn off all stuff.
Right. Yeah. So today, if you're not on, don't have a Microsoft tenant and you're signing up, you would have to, especially if you get the enterprise, so 300 plus users, you would have to purchase your regular 365 license and then Teams on top separately. Yeah. The business side, it is included today, but that might change in the future.
Yeah, and for everybody on the call, Microsoft year end is end of June 30th. So all the new stuff will come out July 1st.
July 1. So the way that the Copilot presentation built itself out, when it talked about cool features worth talking about, we've already touched on a lot of them. One of them, though, is natural language input. We have a couple customers who have offices outside the country in areas where the language is not English. Sounds like there's a good language input that can translate.
Absolutely. If you haven't seen it, I mean, all my emails.
So to translate from Canadian to American.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can hear me speaking American right now, I believe, except for data versus data. No, the translation capabilities are great. I work in a bilingual company, and I speak zero French, and I get tons of emails in French from our French partners, and I'm like, yeah, this is great. And then it's just, there's a little button that just says translate, and everything's English, and I'm like, why would I ever learn French now? So, the reverse of that is computers don't need to learn languages. They know every language because every word of every language has been coded into a computer. So it doesn't matter where you're from. It'll be a great opportunity to have. The other part is if you record a meeting and it's in English, but your transcription is in French or Spanish or Dutch or German or whatever you have, you can get the entire recap will come in your natural language. Which is kind of cool.
Awesome. Yeah, that is pretty neat. There's another one on here that said real-time recommendations. The way it wrote it had me questioning it. So it says Copilot can provide real-time recommendations to users based on their needs, helping them with informed decisions and improve their productivity. That's probably behavior-based. But is there an element that will tell me that, hey, there's a stronger way to leverage Excel? Or why are you doing it that way, hitting the equal sign and then typing it out, use this equation?
Man. I love when the Windows 95 clippy questions come up.
Yeah.
So, okay. I don't know how many people on here. I'm big on movies. There's a movie with Joaquin Phoenix back in the day called Her. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen it. That thing freaked me out so bad. So for the audience, the premise of the movie is they created an AI, and you could buy your own personal AI friend, and you put on a headset, you talk to your AI friend all day. What happened was, some people tried to marry their AI and all of these things because they built such a strong relationship. The idea with your Copilot and how it can make those recommendations is after you've worked on it. And I think there might have been a question earlier on saying, hey, how do you train your AI? It literally is spend time with it, use it on a daily basis. It will understand how you ask questions. It will understand what you like as output. Every time you ask it to regenerate something and you give it a thumbs up that this new generation is correct, it will store that as the right way to respond to Todd or to James or to Taylor. And once it stores that, that will always only be for your information with your Copilot. So when you go into Excel, your Copilot knows you're always doing, like, instead of auto summing the row, you're like dragging the thing and hitting equal at the bottom and typing in. It'll be like, suggestion, hit the auto sum button from cell number 52. So the answer is yes, it can give you that, but that comes with you using it on a daily basis so it learns forgive me, but it learns your bad habits of using whatever you're using, and then it can make a suggestion.
Kind of coaches you a little bit if you are
Basically.
teaching it and training it and using it. That's good. Yeah. So the last one on there was just about integration within the Microsoft stack. We've been talking a lot about that. So there are a couple more questions, Jermaine. I'm forgetting. Were there any other just elements of Copilot that just blow your mind that are pretty cool worth sharing to the group before I hit a couple more of those questions?
Absolutely. If you haven't used the image generator, if you want a
Yeah.
couple of fun things to do, get Copilot to paint you a picture or create an image generator. So I've got a couple of kids, and I made up a story a few years ago for my youngest, and it's called The Wolf Beaver. And it's basically a knockoff of Red Riding Hood, a kid's version where nobody gets eaten. And so I was like, for years, I've been struggling, like, how do I make this wolf beaver hybrid look? And I just plunked it into Copilot, and I got it to make me a bunch of pictures of this wolf beaver running about, so I could put it in a handwritten storybook that I made. So from hey, how do you use this and have a little bit of fun with it? That's one of the ways, right? The other way is
Yep.
I ask it silly questions like, if you're in a battle with Google, how would you win, and what will be the deciding factor? And I'm like, I'm now Google, and I have conversations with my AI trying to figure out new ways of doing things, coming up with names for things that you want to do. If you're like me and you're kind of stuck on, you're not a marketing person and you can't create the best name for your new paper or whatever publication you're doing, ask it to generate some names. If nothing more, it'll show you a bunch of stuff that you didn't think about, and it'll kind of give you an idea of what to do. Because the other part of it is you can tell it to do things within a certain age group. I think this one's the best for me. It's like, hey, can you write a response to this question as if I were a 5-year-old? And it'll give you the explanation as if you were a 5-year-old. And that way now you're like, well, I'm going to talk to that client today and they don't know a paperclip from a photocopier. Can you write it in the version of this to help me be less technical? And then all of a sudden it'll give you, and I think those ones are a lot of fun for your day to day. But ask it everything. Like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And when it does, it'll blow your mind.
Yeah, it'll surprise you. There's been things where it would take me 10 minutes to try to do something in a formula to convert data to look a certain way in Excel, where I just typed in the Copilot and it did it. And I was kind of blown away. It formatted numbers in a specific way that I needed to import them, and it did it. Something that took me 10 minutes, it did it in seconds.
Conditional formatting. I hate that.
Yeah,
I just took Copilot to do it.
I use it often for summarizing long emails. Often my position, I'll get added to an email thread with 20 messages on it, and I don't have time to read through all that. So a lot of times I'll just summarize with Copilot. And at first I didn't trust it. So I use it on existing emails that I'd already read through. It nailed it spot on. It summarizes what every single person on the thread said, what decision been made that far, and what input they're waiting on me. And it was great. I use it also to help if I have writer's block on how to communicate something. I'll have it get me started on that. So it's been very helpful with that.
One other one I wanted to add to, I get a lot of long PDFs on updates from Microsoft products and all this stuff. I just use Copilot to read it and tell me the top 10 things that I need to focus on in the spread, because it'll read the whole document and then just give me the outline of what I need to know. So I was like, can you convert this 67-page PowerPoint slide of PDF slides into a one-pager and what I need to know? And it does it. So I don't have to read all 67 pages of what they sent. I just transform it into a one-pager with an executive summary that I can read in a short period of time. That one's a big one for me, reading other documents.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I was going to end on, guys, is that the Microsoft strategy for adoption is rather in depth. Taylor, I'm going to share something real quick. Do you mind if I kick you off the screen for a second?
Yeah.
The way that the best practices for the roadmap within Microsoft is this 12-step program. This is what businesses are currently missing, in my opinion. They're doing the just to really buy the license and start using it to see what they can get out of it. The get ready we talked about, the defining data governance, the setting up the appropriate policies, and having your employees have a spot they can reach into that's effective for efficiency is what's missed. And so that's where I think the team here listening today, the 60 or 70 of y'all, turning back to your center rep and saying, how far from I guess a reality is this for us, is an appropriate question. We should be able to, through a discussion, determine if this is a just turning on a light switch, or if it is an overhaul of how the data is currently organized. So don't be scared to ask that question. We'd be happy to address that either in our TBRs with your VCIO, or if you're new to center, with one of our account executives and solution architects. We can help you get to that reality. Taylor, you had something you wanted to end with, I think. Is that why you jumped in there?
I was just gonna say, like, we can wrap up, and then there's a few more questions if people want to stay on. I know we're at time now, so.
Hey, great idea, Jermaine. Do you have a hard stop? Did he mute himself?
Oh, I muted myself. I said for you guys, I don't have a hard stop. I'll move whatever meeting I have to stick around for a few more minutes.
Cool. Well, then let's do that. So, guys, we know that y'all have busy days. I appreciate y'all spending the hour with us and talking about Copilot. We're going to go ahead and answer the rest of the remaining Q&A. If y'all have any interest in those, stick around. Otherwise, let us know if there's additional questions you have offline, and we'll be glad to assist y'all. Thank y'all for being here today. Taylor, what's next?
Cool. Cyrus asked, is it possible to get a copy of that adoption guide document?
Yeah, sure.
Let me add the link. While you're doing that, Peter asked, Jermaine mentioned set up a SharePoint site and give Copilot access to it. Does it behave the same with Teams?
Okay, so that's a great question. Easy answer. If your SharePoint access, Teams will have access to everything in your SharePoint. Teams is just literally the front end of accessing your data in SharePoint and your OneDrive. So everything in your SharePoint OneDrive can be accessed through Teams. So there won't be any change in your Teams directly. The Copilot, though, when you're chatting with your Copilot from Teams, it will have access to whatever you've given it access to. So it won't affect Teams. It'll affect Copilot, depending on where it can access information in your environment. Todd, do you want to add anything to that in case I muddled it?
No, you're good.
Cool. Easy answer. Okay, so Jack asked, I assume you can use Copilot to create automation rules, but could you tell Copilot your series of triggers and responses and have it be your automation? Does that make sense? Basically build a workflow through Copilot?
So I want to think about it from this perspective. It's a great question. I like it. When you have Copilot for Power Platform, you can use the Copilot for Power Platform to build those automations and then deploy them in your tenant. And then it can do the automation, et cetera, that you want. So that's why we have two different Copilots now, because the Copilot we're talking about is to help that individual user do all the things they need to do. If someone wants a flow, they want something that is going to be automated in any particular way, that goes with Copilot Studio, which you can build all your Power Platform automations, et cetera, on that end and then deploy them. So personally, I wouldn't want an everyday person in the environment that's not the technology IT people building any kind of flows, because all of a sudden your photocopier will start making coffee and not the good kind.
But they should be able to still use like Power Automate if you're familiar with that and the flows. You can do that with the Copilot for 365 license. But
Yeah,
to get really in depth building bots and more automation like that would require the Copilot Studio. A little more on the development IT side.
So the answer is yes, sort of, depending on what you're trying to do.
Yeah. One more from Jack. What sort of things can Copilot do to help generate sales? Can it build custom unique images for marketing? Can it generate sales leads, lists, etc.?
To be fair, Jack also asked if it can get the Taylor Swift album early.
Yeah.
But so that was a good one, Jack.
You won't be able to steal a whole list of people people that you want to contact. I mean, if you knew a company you wanted to scoop, you could be like, hey, Copilot, can you find me all the contact information for these people? Might work if it's public on the internet. But first, from the sales side, I think a lot of the generation of email follow-up, reading through all the emails, making sure that your client gets check-ins on a regular basis, especially when you're following up on something that they're interested in or you've recommended. It can generate images and so on, but I would 100% have marketing review all of the content you create.
Yes, have marketing do that.
No, nobody wants to see a baby driving a jet engine that, you know, clearly was generated by AI.
That might be good.
But the answer is, yeah, you can do all of the things that you want. I think one of the biggest use cases we've seen in the kind of marketing and advertising agencies is them creating I would say upskilling creative art that they have. So they're also using Copilot to render better artwork overall by telling them where they've got color dips, issues within the kind of the palette across the document or whatever they're generating. So there's tons of marketing agencies that are using Copilot to analyze the work that they have against their competition, and then trying to improve it so that they get a better stake ahead.
If you're not using Copilot for marketing, what are you waiting for? You got to try.
Hey, Todd used to talk about that a lot, that all companies have users that are starting to use AI tools, and the organization needs to wrap their arms around that. The only way you're going to start getting any control on it is if you start introducing tools to enable the rep or enable the employee, and this is the start.
Yeah, absolutely. So much like what you saw with like Dropbox and file sharing sites, your team is going to look to use those tools. They're going to go sign up with ChatGPT and whether AI engine that's out there and ask a question, utilize it. But if you aren't aware of that, if you don't have governance around it, if you don't have policies in place, they might be putting your data or your customers' data out there. So you might as well give them and arm them with the tools that you want and have control over and privacy over. So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Very well said. I don't know how to show up a hand of clapping. But
emojis. Yeah. So
I think that's it for questions on our end. Yeah.
Nice. This was a lot of fun. Cyrus, I'm out in Oklahoma periodically. I'll stop by and talk with you about it. It'd be easy to start getting you the right materials. Jermaine, you had mentioned that you enjoy from time to time taking some conversations and tougher tasks. If we run into any of these that seem advanced to the point that we're starting to break, I'm going to loop you in quick. Hope that's all right with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, shoot it my way. Some of them will be in person, some of them will not. But yeah, let me know what the turnaround needs to be. And if we've got anybody on the webinar today that would like to really dig into this a bit more, I'm ready to get beat up on all the questions. And I'll be the first one to tell you when it doesn't work how it should. So
So there were comments in there, Jermaine, about the potential of free licenses. There are programs, guys, where we can start grabbing those licenses just with the investment of some time. So we will be all reaching out to y'all and let y'all know what's available. So yes, the answer is yes, it is there. We just got to work to get it. So with all that, thank you guys for sticking around with us. Jermaine, thank you for spending the time with us. And Todd, you can get back to reading all your old emails.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it being here. Thank you.
Bye.